Hi, and in this video, as we run up to crunch time when it comes to Brexit, we're literally days away, I mean it's over a week, but days away from Parliament deciding whether or not we accept the deal that we know the EU will accept, even though it doesn't give us any long-term assurances for a trade deal anywhere, much less with the EU, or whether Parliament decides, no, we're going to stop this, we do not accept this deal, in which case one of two scenarios unfolds. Either we come crashing out of the EU with no deal, and there's another video I want to do quite soon on one of the consequences of that again, or two, that we have the people's vote and enough people say, this is ridiculous, we don't know what we're doing, we're staying in the EU. And that would also work. Would work to our benefit, in fact. But what I'll do in this video is pick on one particular lie again. What I always like to do with these things is to highlight the lies from the liars. And one of the things we were lied to about in terms of Brexit is that actually we can grow our industries. You know, we can become more prosperous outside of the EU, which is absolute nonsense to anyone with half a brain. What I'm going to show you here is a bit of a recording from someone called Professor Patrick Minford. And he is basically the lead economist in terms of advisors to the government. He is the guy who got a personal thanks from Margaret Thatcher while she was dismantling British industry for defending her economic policies. So the particular industry we're talking about in this case is the car industry. Obviously, it's fairly obvious to anyone who knows anything that our car industry is going to suffer badly if we are no longer part of the EU. We know that car manufacturing factories are, very worried about the fact that there's, first of all, there hasn't really been any investment in that, because it's like, well, we're moving out of the EU. What sort of trade agreements are going to exist? We don't know. We still don't know. Even if MPs accept this deal, we still do not know what sort of trade deal we're going to end up with, because the deal that MPs are voting for is not a trade deal. We don't have a trade deal. It's just giving us a stay of execution for an execution date we set, by the way. Remember, leaving the EU was triggered by our Prime Minister triggering that Article 50, sending a letter announcing that our intention to leave the EU. We are the one who set that. And all we've done in the 2 years since is effectively end up having to pay a lot of money for a deal that lets us extend that time before we crash out of the trade deal we already have. But anyway, so I'm going to play the video first of all. And in particular, if you work in the car industry, if you know someone who works in the car industry, if you're in a town where the car industry exists, I want you to pay particular attention to this.
Well, I think that it's perfectly true that if you remove protection of the sort that has been given in particular to the car industry and to other manufacturing industries inside the protective wall, you have got you're going to have a change in the situation facing that industry, and you are going to have to run it down, and it will be in your interest to do it just in the same way that we ran down the coal industry and the steel industry. These things happen.
All right, pay attention to a few things he said there. First of all, he's talking about being removed from the protectionist EU. The EU is protectionist in terms of its trade. And of course, some people are politically opposed to that. I totally understand that, yes. But we are within that protectionist bubble at the moment, which not only allows us to have more trade than any other country. The EU has more trade deals than any other countries. It's a very powerful negotiator. It's a very effective trade negotiator. And now we're going to be on the outside of it, and we're going to have to take part in negotiations. And people say, oh, once we're out of the EU, even without a deal, we're in a position of strength. No, we are not. We're in the position of the most profound weakness. Because at that point, we don't have trade deals with any country on earth. Yes, there's systems in place to help deal with it, but they're not great. The reason we go to all the trouble and spend years, or any country spends years formulating trade deals, is to be better than those default positions. And we are not going to be a position of strength because the EU knows in two ways we are going to be desperate for a deal. First of all, the country is going to be desperate for a deal because we'll be on the massive economic downturn, which has already happened, but it will accelerate after this. Because at the moment, you know, the downturn has been muted by the fact that we might get a deal. So the country is going to need it. We can't just go to, people keep saying, oh, just go to China or something like that, as if there's massive markets over there. And remember, the further afield you go, the more it costs to transport goods, okay? To get goods of the standards we're expecting. It's not realistic. And there aren't empty factories all over the world just waiting to make trade deals with us. The Prime Minister has been going as soon as Brexit was going to be a thing, was going all around the world trying to you can't get trade deals until less the EU, but trying to talk them up, trying to, you know, put feelers out there. And all these countries were basically saying, no, we can't give you a big trade deal because how can they? They have trade deals with other partners already. We can't offer them more money. Where are we going to get this more money from? Anyway, so moving outside of that, we'd then be negotiating with the EU, which is a proven master negotiator. Absolute master negotiator when it comes to trade deals. You know, they regularly take on and beat the United States in trade deals. And we're going to be now their opposition. But then the other thing he said is he says we're going to have to run down the car industries. He's saying right, and I know some people can say, oh, okay, he might be this professor of economics, but he's got his own vested interest. Yes, his vested interest is the Conservative Party. He is the guy, the Conservative Party, which is the current government of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. He is the guy they listen to, the chief economics guy. He is the government's advisor. And he is saying, we, outside of the EU, cannot sustain a car industry. He said we're going to have to run it down. And then note he also said something else very interesting. He said just like the coal and steel industries. Bearing in mind that the government of the time, Conservative government of the time, said that the coal and steel industries, you know, they failed because they failed. He was advising them even then. The government ran down the coal and steel industry in this country. It was a deliberate economic policy to do so. And he is now saying that it is in their interest to do it again. Because when he said it's in your interest, does he mean your as in the country, UK? It's in our interest to lose all our jobs and lose another industry, is it? No, it's not. It's in the Conservative Party's interest to do this outside of the EU. And this is the guy they listen to. And he is going to advise them. He is advising them. That's what that video is saying. He is advising. Let's see if I can find the bit again.
Are going to have to run it down. And it will be in your interest to do it.
You're going to have to run it down, and it will be in your interest to do it. And that is what they're going to do. And he's saying this not because it's somehow in the Conservatives' interest for their son to be massive unemployment, but because it's not. He's going to say that without being part of at least the customs union with the EU, it's not possible for us to sustain a car industry. And the same can equally apply to any number of other industries that manufacture products, much of which is destined for the EU. And the reason for this, of course, is because of being able to get it over there. That's going to sort of move on to the sort of next video I want to do in the next day or two. But this is the chief lie again laid bare by one person who is advising the government and whom the government are listening to. We're not going to expand our industries. We're going to lose industries. We're not going to be able to secure jobs. We're going to lose them. And you got to bear in mind, some people who may say, oh yeah, there'll be some tough times ahead, but and some people will be saying, oh, maybe in 50 years' time we'll be all right out of it. For a lot of people, losing a job for a month is disastrous. Losing a job, being unemployed for a year would be ruinous. To say that we're going to have massive unemployment for the next 50 years, oh, but then it'll be all fine, is not really in the people of this country's interests. And that's why I am now desperately, desperately hoping, even though I don't ultimately know what will result from it, and it sounds bizarre to say this, I'm desperately hoping that Parliament actually votes the deal down now, because the situation is this. The deal is better than no deal. Staying in the EU is better than everything. If MPs accept the deal, if they vote the deal through, we are leaving the EU with a deal that doesn't guarantee any sort of trade deal in the long term. We're just giving ourselves more time. More time that, as I said earlier, we could have given ourselves by not triggering it as early as we did. Theresa May basically, as soon as she became Prime Minister, she triggered it. It was like immediate. But if we accept the deal, although it's better than no deal, certainly in the short term, in the longer term, it commits us to leaving the EU. And whereas no deal, I know with absolute certainty that the majority of Parliament would do everything it can to avoid no deal. So that would also indicate to me that if Parliament did vote the deal down, that MPs would support a people's vote, which is a vote to decide whether we should actually go through it or not. And that's what I'm hoping for now, because this is so desperate. This situation is so desperate. But anyway, let me know what you think. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to click the like button, subscribe for further content. And until next time, I'll see you later.